Hello and a very warm welcome to the Internet of Things Made Simple. I'm Larry Boy Humor. This is both our 26th mini episode and the third part to our series on the smart home. Thanks for joining us. Now, I've been saying all along that this is a 4-part series, but I've decided to sneak in another one, and I don't think you're going to mind. I had a friend over to the house, and they noticed that not only do we have a number of Alexa-enabled devices, but we also have a bit of a variety. They asked me questions about why and what was the different purpose behind all of them. So there came episode 5. What is the difference between a low-end, a mid-grade, and a high-end device like an Echo Dot, an Echo Show 5, or a Sonos One, which we happen to have? Why do we use them in the rooms that we do? So we're going to do that, as well as cover a bit of a guide as to which one is best for you. So stay tuned for that episode. In the meantime, welcome aboard to any first-time listeners. We always ask 2 things. Kindly subscribe to this podcast using your favorite podcast service, of which we're on a few dozen. And if that podcast service allows you to leave a comment or a review, kindly do so. In this episode, we're going to focus on what is, or should be at least, a major concern for anyone who is thinking of venturing down the path of using smart home products, and that is privacy and security. The power of smart home devices is absolutely amazing, and I can only imagine where it's going in the future. As we put more and more of our lives onto social media, keeping our data secure and safe became a major focus for all those involved in that industry. I think we need to put the same focus on the smart products that we're adding to our lives at an incredibly fast rate. We're going to talk about some of the relevant issues with privacy and security, what some key areas of the issues and vulnerabilities are that you need to know about, and talk about an answer to the question, considering all the potential issues with privacy and security, is it even worth venturing down the path of using smart home devices at all? Since I started in the world of IoT, it was then called M2M, there have been concerns about security. Among the earliest adopters to use the technology were energy companies, both oil production and electricity providers, law enforcement agencies, and many government agencies. To keep the devices secure, they used a number of different methods. Some allowed for devices only to be managed locally. Others kept the traffic off the internet by using a dedicated physical connection to the network, and all of them used some sort of password or VPN technology. Some of those concepts have become a little outdated. Less and less customers are using dedicated connections, and most have decided to allow the ability to control devices remotely. However, the use of passwords and secure traffic is often found in many of today's smart home devices, and for good reason. This is also where some of the issues arise. Many devices still use the same common username and password for administration, and many customers are either too lazy or don't know enough to change it. The same goes for encrypting the data that's being sent from the device to the cloud for you to view. While someone may not be interested in viewing your living room, some of these devices still lose marks for failing to encrypt the data along the way. Considering that most pages are now secure on the internet, just look for that little lock on your browser, it's kind of bad that your data wouldn't be encrypted for the smart home by default. The same goes for the topic of privacy, namely of your data. Now, I've spoken in the past about services like Google Maps and Facebook. These are wonderful services. They've changed and impact the lives of millions of people. And while they're free, they're not without their cost. Take Google Maps. It costs Google millions to keep the service running, so they need to recoup their losses somehow. They use the combination of where you are, who you are, and what you search to improve the effectiveness of their advertising. They don't really know exactly who you are, but they know all about you, and that makes it much more effective for their service. The same goes for Facebook, who similarly used your posts to allow for an unprecedented level of accuracy and refinement for advertisers to use, likely the best advertising tool the world's ever seen. Your data and posts are valuable to them, so if a service is free, the likely cost can be your privacy. So now that I've scared you a little bit, here's some good news. There are many ways that you can make things better. First, remember that free is not free. In some cases, opting for a paid service may reduce your chances of your data being sold to advertisers. In some areas, you may also be able to opt out of your data being shared, especially over in Europe and other places. You might want to do so. The second thing is to enable all security that you can, as they're usually not enabled by default. always start with changing the administrative password and account name every single time. Next, some of them may allow you to encrypt all the data that's being sent if it's not being done by default. You want to do that. And others will allow a two-factor authentication to access your account. This is a method that sends you a code via text that you have to enter upon signing in. The final area has to do with privacy. Systems like Alexa and Siri are not set up to listen in unless you say a keyword like Alexa or Siri. Some people have claimed this is not the case, but I'm choosing for now to take their word for them. Other devices like the Echo Show 5, which we're going to talk about more next week, allow you to turn off camera access by a little button, which is especially ideal if the device is used either in a bedroom or in a sensitive office area. The last point I wanted to make here is how the information is shared. This comes up when it was mentioned that Ring doorbell feeds are being used by law enforcement as a method of neighborhood watch. This obviously has great benefits, but it can cause more privacy issues than one thinks. I hinted at in an earlier podcast how Ring, and I guess any other video doorbell, are constantly violating the privacy of neighbors' homes. When you install one of these, you really need to be sure that your feed is not picking up anywhere in your neighbor's house that it's not supposed to. I'm just going to segue into something and try to deal with it quickly here because it's not a very nice topic, and this is how smart home is enabling a new kind of stalking and harassment. In a much earlier podcast, I spoke about how many, I'm just going to call them deranged individuals, are using the power of smart home technology for bad to stalk or threaten their exes. Imagine a scenario where one partner sets up the smart home and has access to all the accounts, and in some cases, they might be the one still paying the bill. Once they were to leave the home, the access to the accounts are not cut or changed, and I don't blame the manufacturer, they have no way of knowing this. There have been accounts of people turning on lights at all hours of the day, using the system to enter into the premise without permission, cranking up music at 4 o'clock in the morning, and other warped ways of disturbing the lives of the ex. One hopes that access to these systems becomes part of any divorce settlement hearing, and equally important, any restraining order ensures that the victim is protected in a similar manner. It's important to know, though, on a similar note, that some of the threats that are here can be done by somebody who hacks into your system if you don't take the security precautions that we spoke about earlier. We're going to finish up here with answering that big question. Should you venture down the path of smart home quite yet? Is it just too early in the development cycle? Some of you are no doubt wondering this. Why would I want to put all these potential issues into my life by using smart home just for a bit of convenience? A few things you want to consider here. There are millions and millions of devices out there. So are you really as much risk as you think you are? I mean, why would someone target you specifically? It's unlikely that people would target you without knowing you. So the risk is not as bad as you might think. Again, doesn't mean you shouldn't take precautions, but I don't think the risk is as high as people think it is. Second point is, the average hacker really is not that sophisticated. They're going to try to use different tactics to obtain your passwords, phishing and all that stuff. But if you don't fall for them, they're probably not capable of getting in unless your password is stupid easy. A strong password combined with two-factor authentication means not only does the intruder have to crack your password, they need to get a hold of your text. If you then turn around and use a similar level of password protection on your phone, it's almost impossible for the average hacker to get in. Not impossible, but almost. 3, this one might be up for debate, but I always tell people this anyways. What kind of information in your life do you think that people might get to know about you? Well, they're going to find that interesting. I ask Alexa for the weather, how my drive somewhere is, and to turn off the lights. I don't know about you, but I don't see anything embarrassing there. This is especially true in the age of where people put way too much of their freaking personal life on Facebook and Instagram anyways. So is there really much people are going to learn from your assistant? I'm not really sure here. Is the move towards smart home still worth your while? As I've stated on a few occasions, it's often about your lifestyle. If you're a homebody who gets around well and has no mobility issues, there might not be much of a value for you. However, most of us work outside the home. Perhaps you have kids coming home at different hours, and many people are interested in reducing their electrical bill and the cost of maintaining their home. If you fall into one of these groups, and most people do, and you're willing to do a bit of work up front to make sure that security is enabled, the vast majority of people will find the value far exceeds any issues using smart home technology. I do thank you for listening to the first 4 parts of our series on the smart home. As mentioned, we've decided to add a 5th one. In next week's episode, we're going to examine 3 different kinds of smart devices. We're going to use the Alexa ones, but we're also going to talk about Apple and Google and other products as well. They're all different price points and have different feature sets. We're going to go over these device levels, what their individual values are, and which ones might be ideal for you and in which parts of your home. As always, we love to hear from you, good, bad, and ugly. Start with our Facebook page, The Internet of Things Made Simple, which also has some material you might want to take a look at. If I'm connected to you on LinkedIn, drop me a note through that service. And if you and I are personally connected, drop me an email or text. Talk soon. I'm Larry Boyhumer.